Hey, welcome everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Driven by Design, the only show that shows you the future of automotive design. One car, one conversation at a time. With the man who seems to know everybody to talk to in this industry, our driven designer, Bryan Thompson. Hey, Bryan.
Hi, good morning. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. And hello, everybody.
What a special occasion. You're up in the Bay Area, and you have an opportunity to be with a man that you claim was one of the mentors in the business, certainly a legendary designer of cars like the Mazda Miata and others. Why don't you introduce him and bring him in?
I will. We are going to be talking to none other than Tom Matano today, who is famous for creating the Mazda Miata, the RX-7, and a whole host of beautiful, timeless designs in that era of Mazda. And then I was lucky enough to have him as my mentor in the car industry. So here is Tom. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Paul and Bryan.
So I'm looking at Tom and I are in separate rooms with glass windows. So I'm looking at Tom, but we'll run over each other's speech patterns. So I wish our audience could see how this is working.
Well, we're trying to get you on two separate lines. I made you call in on two different phones, even though you're really physically in the same building here and in the same room here. Well, this is going to be a lot of giggles and laughs, I can tell here today, because you two obviously have a history. Talk about the history and how you two worked together and what you did.
Oh, gosh. Tom, I think
Go
it's
ahead,
best
Bryan.
if you tell it. Oh, well, I'll tell a little bit and then you can. So I was designing for Nissan for a decade, and then one day a colleague of mine named Anka Bodak came to my desk and said, you're leaving, and I'm leaving with you. And we left to work for a startup car company. And the reason she said that you're leaving without even asking me was that the design of the vehicle was being led by none other than Tom Matano, who I was very much aware of and a fan of. And so I reached out to Tom, and he agreed that I could style the car under his tutelage. And we walked out the door and started this adventure. How about that, Tom?
Oh, that sounds good. I agreed to do this design project, and then all of a sudden he said, "Oh, we got a designer for you."
Yeah,
that happened to be Bryan,
And can we tell what the project was, or what was it? Is that still secret, or did it happen? What was it that you guys designed?
How long ago was it now, Bryan?
Oh, my gosh, it was 2010 that we started that, so a good 9 years ago.
Wow.
So I was at Nissan for a decade, an even decade. And, so since then I've done so many startups, but that was the first one. But what it was a startup Silicon Valley enterprise that was essentially looking to create an entry-level vehicle that would be sort of like a modern-day Model T, where they were all exactly the same and they would cost $10,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they actually had a great proposition. But the thing I learned along the way with a lot of startups is that if they don't partner with a major manufacturer, they sort of get all the way down the line, and then they find out what the
reality is. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Can I ask that question of both of you? Because we've never talked about this, but as we've said on this show, my late great father was a car executive for Chrysler Corporation, and knew the people that started the DeLorean back in the 80s, some of whom had worked for him at Chrysler. And he was convinced it was going to fail from the beginning. Now, we've seen car companies have been created like Tesla, but it's hard. Can we, his theory, he died before he saw the Tesla ever come to life. His theory was it's too big, too complicated, too expensive to start car companies anymore. It's not the days of Henry Ford. Can we start car companies again, or is it just, are the odds stacked against you?
No, you have to have a patience to see the fruits come through into, return of investment won't happen until like 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So you have to have that sustainable.
No pun intended down the road here, but yeah, right. So it takes a while to see that.
Many of them fail. They don't realize that initial outlay is okay, but to get to production, to get to distribution, to keep the stock going, the inventory going, that's a lot more money than you think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's and I've seen it. It's been 9 years now, so I've seen that over. I mean, I've seen that over and over with startups. The fun part about startups is that they're fast and they're very creative and you do a lot of really neat work. But I've worked on a few that make it, and a few of them get it. A few of them get it that they need some help. It's the ones that don't have the chip on their shoulders that I always have a good feeling about. It's the ones that are going to show the industry how it's done, where you're like, maybe you need to learn a little bit more about how the industry is done before you break the rules.
And do you start with the basic components from somebody else? Do you get the drivetrain and the transmission and all the other stuff, the basic frame from somebody else, the engines, or do you have to start from scratch and do all that stuff too?
I think it's all case by case. Some have a technology that will be innovative and they want to build the car around their technologies. Or some cases they got a whole concept of new marketing, new distribution, new selling the cars, and they may use components to make that happen. So it's case by case.
So you're talking about the Tesla, the Tesla obviously didn't need to buy an engine because there is no engine.
Tesla was a technology of the whole electric drivetrain, and to showcase it or put the name in the market, they used that Lotus frame to create the Roadster. Mm-hmm. That was the quickest way to avoid all the testing of crash testing and all to get into the market. So,
and then they brought in a design team, Franz von Holthausen from Mazda, also was Tom's successor at Mazda.
Really, I didn't know that. Okay.
And that's why, if you think about it, that's why Teslas look like Mazdas, because Mazdas in that era under Franz were of his DNA and styling. And if you park a Mazda from Franz's era next to a Tesla, it's remarkable how similar those vehicles are. Very different Mazda period than Tom's period. And I think, actually, that'd be I'd love to hear Tom talk about cars like the Miata, the RX-7, and his design philosophy, if only because it's influenced me so much. But I also think on a larger level, there's a way that Tom designs that is very unique in the car industry, and I would call it timeless, proportion, and based on the human body. Do you want to talk about your love of car design and what talk about the Miata and how you styled that car and what you were doing when you did that?
Oh, that was beginning. Start with a convertible, so it's a lot different to designing the coupe or sedans. But again, the whole. I guess my design philosophy is it should communicate what it is, what it does, through the body design in a way. So Miata was like jogging shoes, never meant to be like a sports car with a spike shoes. You had to have a special track to run. They're day-to-day sports cars. You go around the block and you're having a fun. So that was a Miata. And then it has to convey that through the body shape.
I never thought of it as shoes. We're deciding. Talk about that for a second, because you said, and I saw a video you guys did earlier, and you say you put the car on you. I always think of me putting myself into the car, but you're almost like putting the car on you.
Outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah, to wear it or
Talk about that. That's a different take on how a car should feel or look or be designed.
Yeah. So Miata was not really challenge the driver, but go with you. We go anywhere with you and having a fun. That was the Miata. Or you park on the side of the street and say, don't use that rough towel on me. Please be gentle with me. That's the sort of communication we put it into the surface.
These cars, so you see them as, I'm sorry, we're all jumping each other. I'll ask one question, I'll let Bryan throw his in. Do we, this is for Tom again, so do you see the car talking to people?
I think so. My philosophy is if you're a really good design to communicate with people, if you park your car, any shopping mall, whatever, and shut the door, try to walk away from your car, but a car make you turn your heads back one more time to look at the car. And some car doesn't do that. You shut the door, walk away, never really looking back.
Yeah. What do you think of that, Bryan?
Some cars... make you turn your heads to look at it, then make you smile or whatever. And that was a kind of car that we wanted to build.
Yeah, when we were doing the V car, that's what the car was called, the V car, together. The first time we worked together, that's what we would do. Is I would leave the studio at night, and if I didn't look back, and look at it one more time, then I knew that I hadn't done my job that day.
Interesting. I never heard of that. Yeah.
You know, for Miata's concept, I said, you brought the car home for the first day, you purchased the car, bring it home, take everybody for a ride, but at the end of the night, before you turn into bed, you may sneak up into the garage and say goodnight to the car.
Amazing. What
and then you go to Miata Club, and I say that, and how many of you did that? And they almost 100% they raise their hands. And then someone said, "Well, admittedly, I slept the night in a car for the whole day."
Couldn't believe it. Yeah. So it's almost it's almost like a golden retriever. You bring it home, and you can't let it just sit out in the garage. You have to go out and pet him one more time here.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and he, what I think is, and getting to work for Tom for such a long time, it's amazing how much it affected the way I designed cars. I thought I knew, I was a decade at Nissan when I left, and I thought, I know how to design a car. But when I started working for Tom, it was like going back to school. It was like I had to check all that ego, and and it was like absorbing all my Yoda trainings for Luke and Star Wars,
Yeah.
because although he's very nimble like Yoda, but just that philosophy of that a car is anthropomorphic and to embrace it, but there's a happiness to those vehicles, and not in a cute way, but in a very organic way. Tom, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite stories is your philosophy on how a convertible top should match the color of the driver's hair.
Yeah, because I changed my car's roof to my hair color gray.
But his hair went from black to gray.
Yeah.
That changed the color of his roof.
Yeah.
But why, Tom? Why is that important?
Well, because you sit in a car and you expose your heads to the air, to the people's view, and you have another color next to you. I don't think it's good.
So should we have it in blonde and brunette and gray? I mean,
most of those people with a blonde or brunette hair tends to like a beige or a tan color anyway, and then they look better.
So his Miata, his personal Miata, Mazda dyed the top to the exact shade of his hair.
Oh come on! I can't believe it.
I had an inside track.
Yeah. So the only one.
I knew the particular body color comes out 2 years ahead of time, so I had enough time to adjust the colors at the top and the leather for the interior.
So how do you? Again, it's this idea of putting the car on you. It matches my hair. It's shoes that make me feel a certain way here. Is that common? Is that different? Where did you come up with that idea? Because I think of me being inserted into an environment, not me putting it on like a suit of clothes.
No, I think, you're watching people in traffic and stuff start to feel, that's what it is. Like we were doing this luxury car, and I wanted to have, as soon as they signed up until the car being delivered, I was going to give them a little color chips of, the body color and interior color they pick, and they can go out and buy a purse or the shoes with those color chips.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I wanted to...
Although, that didn't happen, but I wish it could have been.
Yeah, right. That coordinated. It's an outfit. You coordinated with the rest of your outfit here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and when we were working on the little car together, one of the cool things about that car is that they were all offered in a kind of pearlescent white, unpainted finish. Really cool. But the owner was going to be able to customize that finish with graphics and stuff, and that is now becoming so popular. It's amazing how how literally we translated that idea, and he's always been onto something with that people.
So how do you customize it with graphics? Do you just put pinstripes on it, or do you put a caricature of you on it?
Either way, whatever you want to do, you can wrap the whole car.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
you
right.
can change the
But, the
colors,
technology's there in the same way you can.
No, you can put your favorite team colors or team graphics or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and it's really neat because at that time the technology wasn't there to do it digitally, but the technology was there to put there's a real difference between customization and personalization. Customization is sort of like picking things.
Yeah.
Mini I would say is customization where you can pick like a checkerboard, you can pick this pattern, but personalization means it's one-off, it's yours, and they had a really great concept, with 3M where you could upload graphics and then have them printed and then wrapped on the vehicle, and they figured out all the logistics and stuff. But what I find is that while the idea may have had problems in its execution, the concept had legs, because I see that in the vehicles I'm working on now, 10 years later, with a lot of smart screens on the outside of the vehicle, meaning glass that gives information. Yeah. That is what's actually happening. People, the vehicles coming will change their personality depending on who's in them, just like chameleons. And it's really cool to think that, and that's the way to do it. You don't actually need physical hardware. It's all done through software now, and less commitment. So it's like changing an outfit,
So is it like a mood ring? I put it on and it changes colors depending on the mood?
Well, that could be done too.
Yeah, that could be done too. Or simply, tell people where you're going, or like, if you're in you have a certain kind of pattern that you like, texture. The smart glass is changing everything, because also on the inside you'll be seeing information about, where you're going or what you're doing.
Right.
Let's just say, like, if you were like out looking for houses for sale, the smart glass could overlay which houses are for sale and how much they cost and who to get a hold of, et cetera, as you drive by.
I saw an amazing thing a couple of years ago from Corning. It was a proof of concept video they did about the future, and it showed you
glass?
Yes, and you walk, everything is glass, and everything's a video projection, from your mirror to your glass door to the glass in your car to your countertop, everything. Yeah. Fascinating.
That was such a great video, actually.
It really was. Go look it up if you haven't seen it on the internet.
But talking about a personalization, I just came back from England. They had their Miata Club 30th year anniversary event, and they had over 2,500 cars there, all Miata.
Wow. In England.
They park with, ears or colors or different groupings and stuff. The most amazing thing is all the owners go straight back to their own cars. Even 100 wrecked cars, they will go back to their own cars. See, they got this personal connection with their own car.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
If they left the factory, the all 100 cars are same spec, same,
They can find theirs. Yeah, every owner knows every dog knows his master here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm simply amazed.
All right, so where did this sensibility come from, and how did Mazda come to embrace it? What made Mazda open to this approach that you bring to cars?
That's a great question.
Well, I guess I joined Mazda, and they're like any other car companies, very straightforward.
Sure.
No emotional attachment to the vehicle. In fact, they're just a product.
Right.
But I always felt the car's more than that. So by designing the surfaces to communicate, and that's the whole way. And if you look at a Mazda today, 30 years later, they are doing exactly that to differentiate themselves from the other car companies. And the boys doing it is the one came through my studio.
And explain that, because you that's clear to you. It's not clear to me. What does that mean, that the surface conveys something? I don't.
Well, like I said, if you look at the RX-7, I don't know if you know or not, the third generation RX-7.
I've seen it, yeah.
It's the most beautiful one, the organic one.
And then say, hey, we went to the gym and toned the muscles. You got to try or challenge me or something.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be the message.
Mm-hmm.
And for 6 months, we surveyed the owners who purchased the car, said their number one hobby is go to gym and work out.
Really? Okay.
So we communicated through that particular psychology, so to speak, in a way. So one example, Mercedes did the Maybach, the top-of-the-line sedan.
Yes, right.
And the Rolls-Royce came up with a Phantom at almost the same time. Now, the difference between the two is when the Rolls come in, I feel like my spine's going to straighten up, and then it sort of step one or two back. from the curb side. When the roads come over,
Mm-hmm.
authoritation, that vehicle design does that to you. I'm the authority, you step back, or, But a Maybach didn't do it, just like S-Class. So people didn't recognize that being that special model.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to cancel that program once because of that.
So, in other words, what Tom is saying is that the Rolls-Royce has a presence and a stature, and they've done that with design, but the proportion, the linear nature, the upright grille, the fact that the wheels are huge out at the corners, and it's very almost architectural, the car. Whereas the Maybach, it could have almost been a Hyundai. It was very round and organic and soft and almost kind of meek looking, right? And so when you looked at the Maybach, you might somebody who's like keyed into the brand will be like, oh, that's a fancy car. But the feeling is what Tom is talking about. If you took the badges off the car, the Rolls-Royce would still do that to you.
And the Maybach didn't really succeed, did it? It wasn't a real hit. They thought it was going to be the ultimate luxury competitor to the Rolls, and it didn't. It interior always looks impressive, but there was something missing. You're saying it was the Majesty.
Yeah. The Majesty.
That's exactly right.
And so with Tom's philosophy, designing for Mazda, if you look at the cars from that era, what I always thought was fascinating for me, leaving Nissan and having helped and participated in developing the design language of Nissan, which was very different from Mazda, ergo Tom's aesthetic. There was a lot of lines used to describe a Nissan. We relied on a lot of lines telling stories, as I like to say. And each one of those lines on the car were identifiable as creating an image or a feeling in the car. When I went to work for Tom doesn't use any lines. It's all shape. like his renderings are beautiful. Highlights. Go ahead, talk about that. Tom.
Yeah, explain that, because I'm trying to picture that as a non-creative person. So just to be clear again. Yeah, explain the difference,
For example, classic beauty is, the car comes out to you, and a spark of a lights hit on, like, say, headlamp, and then go through the whole body side, the lights up, and then tail end, and then car disappear out of your sight.
Right.
So that's sort of a nice-looking car in the past.
Right.
And today, some of the cars are designed by computer graphics and all, so they need a little bit more more noise or different lighting, flash lighting. So the things that Toyota does today is more like a mirror ball. The lights are hitting every angle and just sparkle every way. And then
let me stop you for 1 second, because I think of my 5-year-old grandson who needs 5 shiny objects. He has attention deficit disorder like his whole generation does, and he's got the smartphone's flashing, the this is flashing, his tennis shoes are flashing. He needs that constant stimulation. You're saying that almost overstimulation. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but that's how it is.
Right.
And so I consider that classical beauty is classical music. How it is, like harmonies and rhythm, and some accentuation comes in when the drum comes in or whatever. And then new one that what we're doing now is like our rap music, rhythm and poetry. You have to have a rhythm, you have to have the jagged edges or whatever to
and a real strong pulsating beat to it. Yeah, right. A lot of noise.
Listen to that music
I've never heard this
looking at those cars, you can understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, to go back to the Mazda today is like they've gone through the classical music era, trained in classic, but they decided to do this modern jazz. That's how modern jazz is, came out of a classic music training. So what Mazda does today, the lights dancing a little bit more than like a classical way, little snap and stuff. And I think it's a modern jazz that they are doing.
I'm a big jazz buff, and obviously what makes jazz is not just the syncopation, but the improvisation. You're not sure what's coming next. Is there an uncertainty to design, or is it all?
Well, that's a sort of surprise of a light hitting in a different way than you normally expect, but it's still overall within the context of harmonies and stuff.
Wow.
Disrupting like a rap music.
I wish we could go on for hours. We're down to the last couple minutes here. I'm wondering if we should do a part 2 of this one too, Bryan, here, because we're just starting.
We could keep going. If Tom has the time, do you have time, Tom, for another 20 minutes, or you got to get back?
Well, yeah, I'm fine.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's wrap up today's episode here then with that theme, because that's a very interesting idea of cars as music, cars that speak to you, that sing to you, that call out to you to look back at them one more time. I've never heard that whole idea. How did Mazda embrace that, and is anybody else embracing that idea anymore? That'll be the last question here. How did that idea go over at Mazda? How did you get them to do that at Mazda, and has anybody else got that idea today?
Well, just, like I said, the design's always a human business, so we got the guys that embraced that when I was doing this, those kind of work 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And they're hitting the studio, they're hitting a department, each key position's held by these people.
So they've come up trained under this idea. Is that still, give me a car that's still doing that. You talked about some of them as wrap, as disco balls, as multiple shining objects here.
That's more like a Toyota CHR would be the rap music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Nissan Juke will be another one.
And who's sticking to your philosophy here? Who's still trying to surprise?
I think the best one still be the Mazda doing new Mazda 3, or there's some other Vision coupes and concept cars.
Okay.
Mazda has a really interesting sensibility of all the Japanese, because it's a very emotional company, and when you drive a Mazda, while Tom is talking about styling and design, it also infects and infiltrates the engineering department as well, because they're seeing what's happening in design.
Yeah,
so Mazdas are always fun to drive.
Yeah.
They make you smile when you drive a Mazda. And so it's like not every car company does that, and I think it's a really neat thing. The impact of Tom's work, he's very humble, but the impact of his work is pretty profound.
Well, it sounds like it's had a profound effect on me. It made me think here pretty hard. I'm going to have to go back and look at these cars in a whole different light today here and see which ones talk to me.
I'll show you the little one
back to me.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap it up, the first episode here. We're going to come back and do a second episode that we'll play later. So those of you listening live or later, just know there's a second version of this coming up here. How do people reach you, Tom, if they want to talk more or learn from you? Is there any way are you in retirement? Are you out there actively working?
Well, I'm still teaching these ideas to future designers at the school here in San Francisco.
Okay. What school is that?
Our university.
What school is that?
The name of the school is Academy of Art University, School of Industrial Design.
Okay, all right.
I'm heading that department.
And is there a website or anything if people want to learn more about that school?
I think www.academyart.edu.
Okay.
And he also has a great Instagram account called Miata Papa.
Miata Papa.
Miata Papa it's just full of great design inspiration. Tom is an Italian man in a Japanese body, as he always says. So he has the best coffee, the best gelato.
The best suits, the best shoes, all that. Well, it's been...
Yeah, because I couldn't sing a song like karaoke, or I couldn't play golf, and I don't drink, so I kicked out of Japan.
You had to adopt another culture here, right? Well, I'm glad you adopted Bryan and brought him into the fold, and I thank you for sharing it with us. Stick around, and we'll do part 2 right after this.
All right.
You've been listening to another fascinating example of the people who are driven by design right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.